Good morning, everybody. Great to see, great to be with you here today in our beautiful Sunday out there. And hopefully we can spare some time to talk a little bit about spiritism and to talk a little bit about mediumship today. As a reminder to us all, we have an upcoming bake sale happening on June 27th, and we ask that all the pre-orders be in by June 23rd. And you can talk to Carol through our WhatsApp or any of our social media channels, or email us at communication@fsscalgary.ca. And I highly recommend the cakes. They're people tend to really like them. And good morning, Sanina. Great to see you here. And as usual, we start our meetings with the harmonization text, just to bring everybody to a more serene state and to start our connection, our communion with our Father. And today, since we're talking about mediumship, the text is from Our Daily Bread. It's a book by Chico Xavier, Through the Spirit Emmanuel. And it's chapter 162, entitled Spiritual Manifestations. And this comes from a passage from Paul in the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 12. When Paul says, "Now to each one the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good." Beautiful passage. And Emmanuel develops this interpretation by saying that with the revivification of pure Christianity in the Spiritist groups with Jesus, the same preoccupation exists, which used to torture the students of the apostolic times with regards to mediumship. The majority of the workers involved in evangelization become anxious for the immediate development of their incipient faculties. In certain centers, they insist on an achievement superior to the possibility that they dispose of. In others, they dream of great phenomena. The problem, however, does not lay in the exterior acquisitions. Let each individual enrich his own intimate illumination, intensifying his spiritual powers through knowledge and through love, and he will enter into the possession of eternal treasures in the natural way. Many students would like to be great clairvoyants or admirable prognosticators of the future, motivated by the prospect of superiority. However, they do not even deign to meditate on the sweat of the sublime achievement. They are inclined toward profit, but do not reflect over the effort to achieve it. In that regard, it is interesting to recall that Simon Peter, whose spirit felt so happy to be with the glorious Master in the tavern, was not able to withstand the anguish felt by his friend flagellated in the Calvary. It is justifiable for the disciple to hope and seek spiritual aggrandizement. However, whoever does have a humble spiritual faculty should not be unappreciative because of a fellow student has a more expressive quality. Let each person work with the material he was given, convinced that the Supreme Lord does not take part in the activities of spiritual manifestations according to the human whims, but rather according to its general utility and usefulness. So let us pray. And in these beautiful words of Emmanuel, bringing to us the importance of the usefulness, of the utility of our work, relinquishing us from the burdens of compassion, of comparison, and instilling in us the love and kindness of compassion, focusing our efforts, our work in the utility, in the usefulness. We ask today that our Lord, our Father, who art in heaven, in and in our hearts, we ask him that our communion today be a communion of peace, a communion with understanding, with love, extending our hands to Jesus and asking him to inspire us, to give some intuition to all of us, everyone speaking and listening, so the words can make sense in our hearts and spring and blossom into flowers in our actions. God, may our hearts be with you, my heart, your heart, all our hearts be with you today, forever and ever. So be it. Thank you. And thank you all for being here today, as we'll start talking about mediumship. And mediumship is a topic that is dear to my heart, and it is a topic that we usually don't touch upon a lot at FSS. It is a topic that a lot of people know of it, they know of the word, but it's a topic that's very misunderstood. It's a topic that is not well understood. And today, the title, we came up with this title, Mediumship and Me, because we want to really drive some reflections about our role towards mediumship and how that impacts our lives, all of our lives. So if you think that you're not a medium and this talk isn't for you, I'd invite you to stay and listen, because this certainly applies to all of us. And we got some inspiration for this talk from a talk by Arturo Valadares entitled The Harvest of Mediums, or A Seara dos Médiuns. A talk from Alberto Almeida entitled Mediumship in the Light of Spiritism. We have some Spiritist books as well from Kardec, The Gospel According to Spiritism, The Spirit's Book, The Medium's Book. We have a few books from Chico Xavier through the Spirit Emmanuel, entitled Mediumship and Tuned, or Mediunidade de Sintonia, and a book called Roadmap, or Roteiro, and a book by Afra Stefanini II, or Second, entitled Mediumship Reflections, or Reflexões Mediúnicas. And today, since we are reflecting a lot about mediumship, good morning, Anna. Thank you for coming and reminding ourselves that today is Father's Day in Canada. So to all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day. So let us reflect about the mediumship and asking ourselves the what. What is mediumship? What is that phenomenon of mediumship? And then the other question, the why. So why have mediumship? What is the purpose of mediumship? And then the how. What should be the focus of someone working with mediumship. And lastly, the who. Who's a medium? Am I a medium? Are you a medium? Is everyone a medium? So throughout our conversation today, we'll be addressing all these questions, and we invite you all to participate. Welcome, Carol. Good morning. Great to see you all here today. So without further ado, let's talk about the what. So what is mediumship? And we will be utilizing a lot of literature today because it is one of the first talks about mediumship that we do. So we want to have that basis of that literature that Spiritism brings to us. And to this, to answer this question, to answer the what, we're actually going to resort to the Gospel according to Spiritism in chapter 28, item 9. When Kardec tells us, and he gives us a really logical comparison and explanation for us to understand mediumship in a very simplistic and simple way. He says that in order to know the things of the visible world and to discover the secrets of the material nature, God has given human beings bodily sight, the senses, and special instruments. So that makes a lot of sense. So in order for us to know, to understand the physical world, the visible world, God gave us our sight, our sense of smell, our ability to feel with our hands, right? And all of our senses to be able to discover the visible world, to interact with the visible world. The same way that God also allowed us to develop something called the telescope, which allows us to plunge our eyes into the depths of space, right? We can't see our space with our naked eye, but through this tool called the telescope, we're able to explore space. On the other end of the spectrum, we have our microscopes, which allow us to discover and to interact with the world that is infinitely small. And then comes the what of mediumship. In order to penetrate the unseen world, God has given them mediumship. So in a very succinct and precise way to define mediumship, here Kardec brings us all these reflections, showing that mediumship is a tool, it's a faculty, it's a sense that we have that allows us to penetrate the unseen world. The unseen world being the spiritual world, and it allows us to explore it, to discover it, and to interact with the spiritual world. And through that interaction, we can gather what Kardec will let us know next when he says, mediums are the interpreters in charge of transmitting the Spirit's teachings to humans, or to facilitate that communication, facilitate that communion with this spiritual world. Or rather, they are the material instruments through which the spirits express themselves in order to become intelligible to humankind. So in order for us to benefit from the spiritual world, the mediums would have a play in that role. And it's really important to stress here when Kardec tells us that in order to penetrate the unseen world, God has given them mediumship. Kardec is bringing this faculty as something purely organic. And this is important to stress, that mediumship is purely organic. It has to do with the way we came to this incarnation. When we talk about reincarnation, and especially on the books of André Luiz, there are a lot of instances when they talk about the process of reincarnation and all the the preparation that comes into play before reincarnation, mediumship being a big part of that plan. And so when we incarnate, a lot of times that mediumship role or that mediumship faculty is already embedded there to allow our bodies to be able to have that mediumship. So in other words, it is a purely organic faculty. And we'll develop this a little bit more. But what we choose to do with our mediumship is what will dictate whether or not mediumship will be used for the good and for the bad. Just like with a knife, you can use a knife to feed somebody, to cook for somebody and feed them, or you can use a knife to harm them. The knife is a tool. The knife is not good nor bad, but what we do with the knife is what ultimately becomes good and bad, be it to feed somebody or to harm somebody. Mediumship, again, as a tool, as a faculty inherent to the human body, it can be good or bad depending on how we choose to utilize it. Alberto Almeida tells us that mediumship can be a therapy for the soul if we choose it to be. Right? Their mission is holy because its aim is to open up the horizons of life eternal. And since we've talked a little bit about the what, now we're going to drive to talking about the why. So why mediumship? What is the purpose? And here's where Spiritism changed the course of mediumship, because before, mediumship was very focused on the phenomenon. So on the phenomenon itself, without diving into the meaning, the reason, and the impact for the medium of that communication. So we can say that Spiritism showed us mediumship beyond the phenomenon. And it brought us the profound moral purpose that mediumship can be. So if we say that mediumship is a tool, is a faculty, is a sense, utilizing that tool for the good, utilizing that tool with Jesus can be a profound transformational opportunity for the soul to progress. And we'll see a little bit more about this. And what Alberto Almeida said that really touched me when he said, the proof convinces, but it's love that converts. So when we're still ingrained or still focused on the proof, trying to understand the phenomenon itself and just the phenomenon, the proof can convince, right? We can, for example, receive a letter from a psychographed letter, so a medium writing a letter through spirit, and in that letter it can contain very specific details that only I would know. The handwriting can be exactly of the person or of the spirit, and so on. So the proof can be undeniable. But if we only fixate on the phenomenon, if we only fixate on the proof will only convince, and that fades away. Because convincing is just here, it's just in our minds. So we can be convinced today, but next year we might need another proof because we've forgotten about it, because we left it in our minds. We didn't let it touch our hearts. And then when Spiritism brings the profound meaning of mediumship that goes beyond the proof, the phenomenon, and dives into the purpose, the moral purpose, then those communications, they move from us trying to prove that it's correct to allowing it to touch our hearts. And when it touches our hearts, then it deeply converts us. And we no longer need that constant proof over and over again, because now it makes sense to us. It has touched our hearts. And we can profoundly find that moral purpose of mediumship. Emmanuel, in the book Mediumship and Tune, or Mediunidade e Sintonia, he brings to us that being a medium is not simply making oneself a vehicle for phenomena that transcend other people's understanding. So he's very specific here. Being a medium is not simply being the vehicle, allowing that communication to happen, or to allowing that phenomenon to happen. He goes beyond that. He says that above all, it is essential that we understand in the mediumistic faculty the possibility of serving. So there, now we start going from the phenomenon to the profound moral purpose. Mediumship is a great and profound tool that allows us, that gives us the opportunity to serve. And he continues on to say, understanding that such a faculty is characteristic of all creatures. Since he saying that mediumship is a faculty of all creatures, this is a great segue for us to move on to the next topic, which is the who. Who is a medium? Am I a medium? Are you a medium? Are we all a medium? And to help us answer this question, we can resort to the Spirits book. Question 459, I believe, when Kardec asks, do spirits have any influence on our thoughts and actions? And the spirits respond, their influence on you in this regard is greater than you suppose. For very frequently, it is they who guide you. So here, starting to allude to mediumship, we're talking about, or the spirits are telling us that spirits influence all of us. They influence our thoughts, they influence our actions constantly. Every one of us. Okay? And now, to find the answer, we'll go to the source, to the Bible of mediumship, as I like to refer to the Medium's book. In item 159, where Kardec explains about mediums, not per se mediumship, but he talks about mediums. He's saying that every individual who senses the influence of spirits to any degree of intensity is a medium. So here's his defining, that everybody who senses the influence of spirit in any intensity, right? It can be a lot, it can be very intense, or it can be very slim, is a medium. Right? So he's focusing on sensing the influence, and we just talked about before in the Spirits book where they told us that everybody can be influenced by spirits. Spirits are constantly influencing all of us. So to continue, Kardec says that this faculty is inherent to humankind. He goes on to say, it therefore does not constitute an exclusive privilege, and there are very few individuals who do not possess it, at least in a rudimentary state. So we can talk for an hour about this sentence alone, but there's two very important points here that he brings to us. First is that the faculty is inherent to humankind. And because it is inherent to humankind, it is not a privilege. So here is where a little bit more about, this is where understanding a little bit more about mediumship can help us dissolve a lot of our misconceptions about mediumship. Mediumship is not a privilege. A lot of times we look to people that are mediums, and we look and we think that they are evolved spirits and they have this amazing journey, that they're not going through struggles and they should be revered and praised. Well, Kardec is telling us here that mediumship is not a privilege. So mediums are not privileged to be mediums. And we'll touch upon a few texts by Emmanuel to explain one of the main purposes of mediumship in our lives. And then he concludes, thus, we can state that everyone is a medium to a certain degree. So if you thought that this talk was not for you, because you don't consider yourself a medium, now is where we explain that this talk is actually for everybody, because as Kardec told us, everyone is a medium to a certain degree. As we're all influenced, we can all be influenced by spirits. The influence is always there. Whether or not we're influenced or we let that influence actually dictate our lives, that is a topic for another conversation. And he says, usually, however, this label is applied solely to those who possess a well-characterized mediumistic faculty, which depends on a more or less sensitive physical organization. So again, to bring us this idea that even though we're saying that everyone is a medium, Kardec is saying everyone is a medium, when we say mediumship, it's usually the word, it's usually focusing on those mediums that possess a well-characterized faculty, such as they're able to see spirits, hear spirits, write through spirits, speak, and so on and so forth. These more characterized faculties. That's what commonly is referred to mediums. And then he says it depends more or less in their physical organization. So again, bringing us back that idea that mediumship it's an organic, it's a faculty that belongs to our bodies. It has nothing to do with our moral, right? So it belongs to our physical organization. So when we see a medium, for example, we can't assume that they are moral or they are moralized or they're making efforts to improve their morals, because just the fact that they are a medium does not dictate whether or not they are moralized spirits. And now we're going to spend quite some time talking about the how. If now we understand that first we're all mediums, and we understand the purpose of mediumship, that it can be a great tool for our own moral development, right? It's a tool that will be good or bad depending on how we choose to use it. But we'll spend some time talking about the how. And the Gospel according to Spiritism on chapter 19, item 10, Kardec tells us that mediumship is something sacred that must be practiced in a holy and religious manner. And Kardec is very succinct here and very specific, because he brings us this idea that mediumship is sacred because it is a gift that God gave us. It is a divine gift. It is a divine tool. It is a divine opportunity. And because the good and the bad doesn't come from mediumship, but the way we use it, Kardec advises us to practice in a holy and religious manner. Holy being practicing with respect, respecting that faculty, understanding the purpose of it, and thus respecting it and doing it faithfully. And in a religious manner, understanding that it is a communion with God. It is a moment of communion with God, communion with the spirit world, and requires responsibility, discernment, and some other virtues, as we'll talk about later. And Emmanuel brings us the reflection that support your peers and you will find the best formula for safe psychic development. Development of the psyche, like Emmanuel is bringing us here, how charity is a great way to develop our mediumship with Jesus. We always say to practice mediumship with Jesus, being this allowing Jesus's guidelines, suggestions, love to guide again the way that we utilize our mediumship. And charity is a great and very profound way to help us guide it towards Jesus, so we can utilize that tool the best way possible for us. And because there is a lot of misconceptions about mediumship, there isn't a lot of times we hear people not understanding truly what it means. It is very important for us to bring the importance of study. The importance of study about mediumship, we cannot stress it enough. The same way, for example, that you wouldn't bring a chemistry student that just started, we wouldn't put him in a lab mixing a bunch of chemicals, because that can be dangerous. The same way that you take a medical student on his first day, he's not at the hospital treating patients. It requires study, right? He can be a person, that was born to be a doctor. He's supposed to be a really good doctor, but still everybody needs to go through those years in college to study medicine. So then they can actually, so only then can they see patients. The same way works with mediumship, in the sense that the study is profound, is of utmost importance to study mediumship before practicing it. And why? For many different reasons, but one of the things that prevent us from practicing mediumship with Jesus, right? One of the things, and many other things, is fear, is pride, is anxiety, is vanity. All these things prevent us from practicing mediumship with Jesus. And the study of mediumship, the reflection about mediumship in our lives, can truly help us dissolve that fear, dissolve that vanity, dissolve that anxiety. Because study mediumship will teach us what it is. It'll help us understand the phenomenon. It'll help us understand what goes on in the mediumistic phenomena. It'll help us understand that those things that happen, they're not just with us, but with a lot of other people. We can share experiences, and we can learn from each other. It'll help us understand, like we just talked about today, it's not a privilege. Mediumship is inherent to humankind. So there is no room for pride, for vanity, because again, everyone has it. It'll help us understand the purpose of mediumship as a tool of enlightenment, but also as an indication of what we did in our past lives, as we'll talk a little bit more later on. So the importance of the study can help us dissect, deconstruct, dilute all of these feelings that we might have towards mediumship, like fear, vanity, anxiety, that we only have them because we don't know, we don't understand, or we don't feel what mediumship can bring to us. And to exemplify what we're saying, we bring a passage from Jesus in John chapter 8, when he said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." We can apply that to mediumship as well. Right? The importance of knowing the truth, right? The importance of that study, to know the truth, will set us free. It'll set us free from the fear, from the anxiety, from the insecurity, from the pride, and so on and so forth. So the importance of the study, like Jesus taught us. And to bring a little bit about the importance of of confidence in mediumship. I'm going to bring a passage from the book Mediumistic Reflections, chapter 6 by Afra Stefanini II, through the Spirit Fernando Lacerda, which is it's truly an amazing book. It contains small chapters that you can read before bed, truly developing and teaching the essence and the ins and outs about mediumship. And he says that having doubts with the perspective of clarifying points and seeking the truth without emotional disturbance is a natural process of evolution. So having doubts about mediumship but wanting to clarify those doubts, wanting to seek the truth without letting that imbalance or disturb our emotion is a natural process of evolution. We won't know it all. We will have doubts, absolutely, right? So that is part of evolution. But he said, but living with the doubt, living without doubt and not seeking to learn will foster mediumistic unproductivity and obfuscates the medium's task is to postpone it for later what should be done today. That is, trust and be useful to Jesus. So living in that doubt, right? Not taking the step to actually learn more, to actually study, is what they're referring to mediumistic unproductivity. And in that unproductivity, we are postponing for later what we were invited to do today, which is to trust and be useful to Jesus. So when do I know that I'm developing? When do I know that I'm ready? Well, there is a passage in the Medium's book. It's question 9. And it asks us, what are the qualities of mediums whom we could regard as perfect? And also, what is the perfect medium? What should I be aiming for, basically? And the answer is it's really interesting because they say, the spirits say perfect. You should know by now, you know very well that there is no perfection on the face of the earth, right? If such were not so, you would not be there, right? So there isn't a perfect medium on earth, right? And if there was a perfect medium on earth, they wouldn't be on earth because we don't have perfection on earth. So instead, they're not calling perfect mediums, but they're changing it and calling it good mediums, right? And they're highlighting there that good mediums also are not everywhere. Good mediums are rare. And they say then that what would constitute a perfect medium, they say would be those whom evil spirits would never dare to try to deceive. Right? So when we're trying to understand what would be the perfect medium, right? The perfect medium is that spirit, is that person that the evil spirits don't even dare to deceive, don't even dare to influence, because they are so enlightened, they're so evolved that evil spirits cannot deceive them. They can't even try, right? It's too much light, and it blinds them. So now they finish the answer by telling us what good mediums are, which is something that we can get to in this lifetime, right? However, the best ones, so the good mediums are the ones that are attuned solely to good spirits and who allow themselves to be deceived the least. This has a profound meaning, because not only does it tell us that the good medium is the one that's attuned to good spirits, but it also teaches us that we're constantly being influenced by, or evil spirits can influence us constantly. But allowing us to be deceived by those evil spirits is what will also dictate whether or not we are in the correct path, that we are becoming good mediums. And it's interesting that they said, they didn't say allow themselves not to be deceived, but they said allow themselves to be deceived the least. Understanding that being deceived by evil spirits will likely happen. But working with our morals, working with our virtues will help us diminish that deception, if you will. It will help us understand when we are being influenced by evil spirits and be able to, with love, foster and relinquish that connection through love, right? And when we bring a text from Emmanuel, from the book Roadmap, just to bring us a little bit of more palpable understanding of mediums around the world, he says that more than 2/3 of the mediums in the world still lie in the zones of spiritual imbalance. More than 2/3 of mediums in tune with the invisible intelligences that are related to them. So 2/3 of spirits still allow themselves to be heavily deceived by imbalanced spirits, by having a spiritual imbalance. Why? Because of this, right? Because of this imbalance, because of allowing themselves, ourselves, everybody, right, to be influenced. They demand study and goodwill in the service of good. So here, Emmanuel is teaching us, right, if we are under the influence of an evil spirit, it's an invitation that demands study and goodwill in the service, right? And study and goodwill in service of the good will resume that harmonious ascent to the tops of life that can be mediumship. And he then makes a comparison saying that just as the cooperators of any respectable institution on earth need constant exercise in the work to grow in competence and credit moral, so just like in anything else that we do, right, be it in our work, for example, constantly being up to date with current trends in your work, studying, improving yourselves, right? It's no different in mediumship. Mediumship still demands that constant study, that constant service in good. Because after all, we're not perfect yet. So we could be inclined to find ourselves out of the path of mediumship with Jesus if we're not studying and applying ourselves to service. So now I want to start to wrap our talk by making some reflections about mediumship as God's mercy, as this huge gift, this huge opportunity that God is giving us to repent. It's a great invitation because it requires a commitment. Remember when Kardec said that mediumship is something that should be practiced in a holy manner, right? That is talking about the commitment to mediumship, the commitment to the moral evolution. So not only are we practicing the phenomenon, not only are we practicing the connection with spirit, but we're also trying to do it for the good, utilizing that tool for the good, utilizing that tool with Jesus, which will in turn fulfill its purpose. And Emmanuel, in the book Emmanuel, in chapter 11, there is a text line about mediums, and in the middle of the text he asks, who are mediums in general? So now talking about the mediums in a general way, not about specific mediums, but the majority of mediums. He's saying that mediums in general are not missionaries in the common sense of the term. And so mediums are not missionary. We have some examples of mediums that were missionary. We can see Francisco Candido Xavier as an example that is close to us. But as we can see, that is not the majority. So mediums are not missionaries. This helps us understand how mediumship is not a privilege, right? How we shouldn't see a medium as a holy person or this special person or this evolved spirit. Emmanuel actually tells us the contrary here. He says that mediums are souls who have failed disastrously, who have gone against the course of divine laws, and who rescue under the weight of severe commitments and unlimited responsibilities the dark and criminal past. So here we can truly see how mediumship is God's mercy. It is a tool for enlightenment. It's a tool for us to repent, to do right what we did wrong before. He said here that the weight of the severe commitments and unlimited responsibilities that mediumship can bring to us is a way to rescue ourselves from our past. All right, so this shifts a little bit, somewhat of a misconceptions that we might have, that mediums were evolved spirits, and this brings us more of a reality around mediumship. That mediumship is again, a divine gift, a faculty of our bodies, that if we do come with that mediumship in this incarnation, it is an opportunity for rescue from our deceitful past. And the invitations, mediumship can be, like we said, a great tool for moral development. And there are many virtues that mediumship will clearly invite mediums to develop. And to name a few, we can talk about first, confidence. The confidence in ourselves, the confidence in God, the confidence in Jesus, the confidence in Spiritism, the faith. Right? This confidence is a constant invitation for the medium. So he trusts God, he trusts Jesus, he trusts the communication, and above all, he trusts himself or herself in that work. The second one, like we said just before, right, when we were talking about the doubt, how doubt can prevent us from using mediumship productively. Here's why, right? There's a huge invitation for confidence in mediumship. The second one is humility. There is a great invitation for mediums to develop humility, because as we said before, a lot of us still see mediums as this evolved spirits and praise them a lot. So we would compliment a lot. And that can be a trial for the medium, for his pride, for his vanity, because that can exacerbate their pride and their vanity. So it is a great invitation for mediums to develop humility. We can also talk about perseverance. It's a great opportunity to develop perseverance, because it is a work that requires perseverance. It's not something that we do at once and we're done. It is when we choose to practice, when we choose to live the life of mediumship, that can certainly be a path that requires perseverance and discipline. Discipline is another virtue, so much so that Emmanuel told, it's well known that Emmanuel told Chico that his focus should be on three virtues: discipline, discipline, and discipline. Right? Having the discipline to work in mediumship, understanding, again, the way to develop that discipline also comes from study, right? Understanding the purpose, understanding the why will help us fuel that will to develop our discipline and to work in mediumship. And lastly, self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is something that I've been talking about for quite a while now, and mediumship is a great invitation for self-knowledge as well, because one of the main questions that mediums ask is, how do I know that it's the spirit or it's me talking? How do I know that it's the spirit or me writing? Or thoughts, how do I know that those thoughts are mine or are the spirit? So that's where self-knowledge comes into play. Understanding when that communication, that thought, that writing is the mediums or the spirits. And then I wanted to talk about the opportunities and some of the blessings that can come with mediumship. First of them being the opportunities of connection. We're straightening, or we're tying our connection with our guardian angels. We're getting closer and closer to them. We can hear their intuition more often if we choose so. And also helps us with engagements with others when we're talking to somebody who's going through something in their lives, right? When we're having a more connected connection with our guardian angels, we can also connect with guardian angels of others, and perhaps be influenced to say a kind word that person needed at that time, right? So it can certainly be a very fruitful development and work that we can do. And to talk a little bit about, I'm running out of time, to talk a little bit about the mediumistic meeting. I don't want to spend too much time here, but for those of you who don't know, in Spiritist centers, we have something called a mediumistic meeting, which is where mediumship is practiced. Being when we have that meeting where you have a medium, you have somebody there conducting the communication and bringing knowledge and teachings to the spirits. We have somebody there doing the passes, and we have others providing support. And in that meeting where communications happen, it is an opportunity, and I think this is amazing that about Alberto Almeida said, it's an opportunity to live the practical spiritism. So as we know, spiritism, there is the practicality around spiritism, which is practicing mediumship, allowing that connection to happen. So the mediumistic meeting allows us to dive into the practicality and the practical of spiritism, and it allows us to practice spiritism through charity, practicing the gospel, practicing Jesus's love in our meetings. And it's so profound that usually at the end of mediumistic meetings, everybody is serene. There's an energy in the room that no matter how tired we are, you started the day early, you've gone through your entire day, and then at the end of the night, you go through that meeting, and you might get there tired, but at the end, you're very serene. It's certainly an energy that can be felt amongst all, usually at those meetings at the end. And not only that, but it is a great teaching for everybody involved, because a lot of times those communications, they bring a lot of feelings as well as words. So Alberto Almeida was talking about how his, I believe it was his nephew or his brother, that had never used drugs before, but he gave a passage to a spirit that was a drug user, and he could feel the pain. He could feel all the feelings that spirit was feeling, and that was a lesson for him. Right, so now he knows what goes through when you use drugs, and what can escalate that into their lives. So he was able to experience that without having to use it. So now he knows better. He has learned. So that's another great part of mediumship. And now going towards the ends, where I'll just read a few texts. Some beautiful words by Emmanuel about mediumship, where he correlates mediumship in nature to help us understand. He says that nature itself is full of teachings in this regard. The earth is the medium of the flower that materializes, just as the flower is the medium of the perfume that embalmed the atmosphere. The sun is the medium of light that sustains man, as much as man is the instrument of planetary progress. So we talked about mediumship and me. That was the title of our talk today. Mediumship and me. What is my role? And Emmanuel says that you can translate the message of the Lord wherever you are, learning, loving, building, and always serving. Because above the mediums of this or that entity, of this or that phenomenon that amazes and moves people. So, talking beyond just, referring to mediums or the mediums of that entity or the medium of that entity or the medium of that phenomena or the medium of that capacity, that we can look beyond that and go back to the basics, right? And see that they remain the conscience and heart devoted to the supreme good, through which the Lord manifests himself, extending to us all the blessing of a better life. And so, when we're reflecting about mediumship and me, Emmanuel says it best. He says that all apprentices of the faith can become mediums of charity, through which the Spirit of Jesus works in 1,000 different ways in each sector of our evolutionary march. So when we ask ourselves, mediumship and me, we can take this text by Emmanuel and let it touch our hearts. That all of us, as apprentices of Christ, as apprentices of faith, can become mediums of charity, through which, in that work of charity, we are being mediums of Jesus in 1,000 different ways, touching every sector of our evolutionary march. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with us in this beautiful Sunday. And I truly invite, hopefully, us all to reflect more and more about mediumship. And I wish you all a great Sunday and a happy Father's Day to all fathers out there. And if you'd like to close our eyes, inviting you all for a deep breath, inviting us all to another deep breath, and let those words from Emmanuel resonate with our soul. All apprentices of the faith can become mediums of charity, through which the Spirit of Jesus works in 1,000 different ways in each sector of our evolutionary march. Thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Emmanuel, for these beautiful words. And help us reflect about it. Help us understand that we can be servants of Jesus. We can be mediums of Jesus through our work, through the smiles, through the hugs, through the looks, through the emotions and love that we exude, that we portray to the world, as Jesus once did. As he himself told us that we can do everything he did and much more. if we become sons and daughters of our eternal Father. Thank you all for another great Sunday, and may we meet again tomorrow. So be it. Thank you all for a lovely Sunday, and enjoy this Father's Day. Thank you.